Hey, welcome to this week's Cyber Talk with Chris and Bob. At least that's the name we came up with this time around. Anyway, what we're talking about today is three things that you should be looking at right now if you use Office 365 to secure the environment. Last week Chris and I talked about some business email compromises, and we talked about a few things. And Chris put together a great list of things that we should be talking about this week. And the first thing, we talked about it last week. Again, we'll talk about it more this week, is multi-factor authentication. There's all different kinds of multi-factor authentication out there that works with Office 365, G Suite, all the other apps. And many times, it's secure, but is it as secure as it could be? And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and understand too that this is all about protecting the identity. That's what this week is really about, is protecting the identity of both the administrators and the users. So that goes back to like what Bob said about business email compromise. So these can be applied to Google as well. We're using Microsoft terminology this time around, but really these three things will apply to Google as well as Microsoft. They just might be a little different terminology. So as far as MFA,
So let's back up for a minute, Chris.
yeah,
We're talking about multi-factor authentication. A lot of people think that, well, that means I get a text message. I get a text message. I have to do something because that's what the banks do. It's easy. It works with everybody. But
yep.
is that really the safest way to authenticate somebody? Because we really don't want people giving away text codes, and they're easy to hack. So
Yeah, one of the things that you come across when you use your phone, we're relying on cell phone providers to protect our phone number, make sure things don't get ported out. There's something called SIM swapping, which is a little bit outside of this, but it's been used to compromise some big time accounts like cryptocurrency accounts and steal hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, where they trick somebody at Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T to port your number out to a different phone, and guess what? Once they have your number, they have your code. So if they can get access to your phone or to your username and password for like Microsoft or Google or whatever, they can then use that phone number, port it out to then gain access to your account. So it's not the safest way. There's malware too that can be applied on Android devices, especially right now, where they could steal the code straight off your phone. You don't even know it.
that's a great point about malware
Yeah.
on the phones, because everyone thinks phones are really secure, but at the core, it's just another computer. It runs programs and can be hacked.
Yeah, I mean, look at the number of 0 days Apple's had in the last year. You know,
Yeah.
they've had they've had a number of 0 days, and if those are executed on, there's a good chance they could read your text messages. They could steal those. Now, there's also other things they can read as well. So we just got to understand that this is a multi-layered approach, and we can't just rely on something.
Well,
But
you just brought up a good point about being hacked. The one of the great things about the Apple environment is the fact that you can get with the iCloud connectors, all your devices can see text messages that are coming in.
yeah, and they're
So
encrypted. Well, iMessage, if it's iMessage, it's encrypted. If it's SMS, it's
understood.
not.
But
Yeah.
if I get another iPad, if I get an iPad connected to your cell phone account
Oh yeah.
that's on your thing, the message comes in, I get it, and then I can log in.
Yep. This is
Um,
exactly why I turned iMessage off on all my other devices. So and if one is added back, you do get a message too. So that's the good news there. That if you suddenly see a message or a new device added to your iMessage, you might want to be a little concerned about that.
Yeah, you might be, but a lot of people ignore those type of messages, and
Yeah.
you never know. So as part of the cell phone authentication process, there's a couple different things we got.
Yeah.
We've got SMS messages, text messages where you get a code, you put it in, and everything's good.
Yep.
But be leery. Don't ever give those codes that you receive over your phone to somebody on the other end,
Well,
even if you called them, because you might not be talking to who you think you're talking
well,
to.
nobody should ever ask you for those codes. Period. Take any service out of there. Nobody's asking you for a code unless it's something specifically designed to authenticate that it's you. So, but if it's something for like an application, like a, a bank, like a SaaS application, like bank or Microsoft or whatever, they're never going to ask for that on the phone.
Well, yeah. There's a bunch of threat actors right now that are sending out these fake Amazon orders, order confirmations. They're coming to the phone. People are calling in. They think they're talking to Amazon, and
Yep.
Amazon's asking them to read the code back. When what's actually happening is the threat actors are changing their password, and they just gave using the text code to do it. So
Yep.
there's other options on the cell phones that you can use.
Yeah.
If Microsoft and Google both have apps that we can put on the phones, and it's actually a lot safer to use the app. And actually, a lot of cases, it's a little more convenient. And Microsoft's got an app you download it, you put it on the phone, and it'll give you a code. When you go to log in, you can look at the login screen. It'll be two or three numbers on the login screen, and you pick the one on your phone and you log in.
So what you're describing is the passwordless multi-factor authentication. Some people don't use that. They'll actually use the push push version. So it'll actually send you a message. It'll say, "Hey, is this you? Approve or deny." And that's great because it makes it easy. It works with like an Apple Watch. It works with the Google Watch. It'll push that. The problem you have with that, and we saw somebody get exploited by this, is if they have their username and password and they just keep submitting it, you'll keep getting those codes. And sometimes it's called MFA bashing. And sometimes users will just click approve. And that's the downside to that. So we got to train users if we do use the push authorization that, hey, make sure this is you actually doing something. And it's okay to hit deny because maybe it's a device that you left at home, like your iPad that's trying to get back in your email and it just tried to authenticate and it triggered that. It's okay to hit deny because you can always hit approve later. You can always go back in and reinitiate it. So deny first, approve second. And
so in that scenario you just described, that threat actor or the other person already has your username and your password.
Yeah, they already know that it's a good username and password. So one of the fundamental problems with MFA, and this is something that we've only seen one other company do this, and I'll out them right here. Keeper Security does a password manager. If you turn on multi-factor authentication with them, they ask for the code before the password.
Okay.
Which is awesome because you have to have the code to submit and then you submit your password. So guess what that stops? That stops password spraying. That stops attacks on the account because if they don't have the code, they're done. Nobody else that I've seen, and I'm sure there's other companies out there that do this, but Microsoft and Google don't do this. They're going to ask you for your password first, then the code. So if they have the password and they put it in and it prompts them for the code, they're like, okay, cool. I already know I have a good password. Now, how do I get this user to click approve and give me access? And that's one of the ways that they'll look at. That's the way that they'll look at it.
But how would that defeat the bashing that you were just talking about of sending out too many codes? You're sending a code that they have to put back in.
No, it'll actually. Let's say for Keeper you could use Duo, and Duo will just it can be a push authorization. So the user would have to authorize it before putting their password in. So it flips the authentication process. So instead of username first, then asking for the code, it asks for the code first, then the password, username, the password. So you put your email address in for the username, it prompts you for the code. If the person on the other end doesn't hit allow, you don't even get a password prompt. So it wouldn't matter if they knew your password or not.
Got it, but it's still susceptible to people getting lazy and hitting the button, hitting yes whenever it shows up.
Sure, but they can't trigger it over and over again automated because there's going to be a delay on it. So you might get an approve here like every like, I don't know, 5 minutes or something like that. A threat actor, when they see that, it's probably just going to turn around and run because that has a low probability of being successful.
Cool.
But yeah, we did see somebody get hit with an MFA bash. And they did authorize it, and they did give somebody access to their account. So be mindful of that. We still have to train people at the end of the day. I think we've spent a lot of time on MFA, but this is really important.
So sometimes, we've come across a few clients where they don't want to use cell phones. They don't. The employee says, "I'm not putting anything on my cell phone. You're not paying for it. I'm not using it." So what do we have other options?
You could do one that's a phone call, I guess. Microsoft doesn't really have that, but there are some
other providers out there. Was it YubiKey?
Yeah, YubiKey. Duo can do that too. If you don't want to use the app, you can use a cell phone. I'd push back on an employee because if it's a free application that they don't have to actually pay for, it's acceptable. There's terms that we have to have in our businesses for employees. And I'm sorry if they're pushing back because they don't want to put a free app on their phone to authenticate. You might want to wonder about that. And
Yeah, I know. I do wonder about that. You know, there's
yeah,
things going on, and then they want to bring that same phone and plug it into the network, and then we got other issues connected up to the
yeah.
Wi-Fi in the office, so
Well,
they could save some money.
and this is our scope for today's conversation, but we'll probably have one on this. How do we protect the data when it's on a personal device? And I think that's probably going to be one of these in the future, but that's something to
Sure.
think about. So think about that.
Well, we're at 10 minutes now. We had three things on the list today. There's no
Yeah,
way that we are going to hit all three things in 15 minutes today. So
I would go a little bit over. This is
we can go
these
a little
last
bit
two are
over.
pretty short. Yeah,
So basically, as far as MFA is concerned,
use it.
turn it on where you can. Always turn it on, and don't accept that you can have individuals at an environment that doesn't have it. The breach I talked about a couple weeks ago was because the business owner didn't have MFA enabled, and it cost him a client.
Arguably, the more important you are in the company, the more important it is that you have MFA enabled.
And those are the people that typically want less security. They
Yep.
don't want to be bothered.
And and one last thing on this, it doesn't have to be cumbersome. This isn't that difficult. If you're getting email on your phone, you're only going to get prompted every 15 or 30 days or whatever you configure it for an MFA code. It's not that bad. If
Okay.
you log in through a new device, yeah, you're going to get prompted. But for day-to-day use, most people aren't going to be hindered by using MFA.
And the new Windows, the latest Windows 10 and 11 PIN code authorization, that becomes the MFA device for the person. So it's validating with a fingerprint or a pass pin, and then they're getting in anyway, and they're not seeing those pop-ups.
Yeah, there's other things we could do, but we're probably past that. So,
So
uh,
yeah, why don't we move on? Why don't we move
yeah,
on to the
global
global
admins.
admin functions of an Office
So,
365 environment?
So we just told you to turn MFA on for everything, and now we're going to violate this in the first term. So global admins have full access into your environment. They are dangerous. This is like no different than having an administrator on your network or anything like that. These are the most precious accounts you're going to have. You should not be running as a global admin on a day-to-day basis. Period. That should be a protected account. If you work with a company like Bob or a company that like mine, we are going to have a global admin into your account. You should have a global admin account that you can use if you need it to protect it. So because there needs to be at least two in an environment, and we could argue there needs to be something called a break glass account, which that one will not have MFA on it. But we're talking, this is a long password. This is only to be used in emergencies, like if MFA doesn't work or for whatever like that. This is not an account that's ever used, and we would set up, and this will kind of bleed into the next part. We are going to monitor that account to make sure that login never happens. And if it does, it better be for good reason.
And you know that break glass account's a great thing to talk about because it's sitting out there to let people in should something happen, but it's never going to get accessed. You know that there's a lot of tools out there. We use some of these tools during our scanning and assessment process, looking for credentials that might have been saved on machines or tokens that were
Yeah.
saved on the machines. If this break glass account's ever used, the next day we're changing the password,
Oh,
and it's not going to be something that's going to be easy to type in.
it's gonna be the worst password in the world for us to type in, and we'll probably screw it up 4 times. It'll take us 20 minutes to log in, but hey, we'll get it eventually.
But you
Yeah.
know, a break glass account's a great thing to talk about, especially when you're working with an outside provider, because you want to make sure you've got access to your data. You know,
Yep.
the data for your company in Office 365 or G Suite is yours. It's not the service providers, and you will need that account to reclaim access should something happen to that relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much. So remember this rule: have more than one, but have less than five. And I think Bob and I are probably in agreement with three is a good number. Two global admins that have MFA enabled, one for us, one for you, and then also a break glass account just in case we need it.
And those global admin accounts, we typically want them set up without email access turned on.
Yep.
There's no reason for most part, there's no reason to email the global admin. you can set up an alias for the same user that goes to your regular account. But if we're logging in to make changes, we want to go make sure that we go and log in to those global admin accounts using a incognito browser, because there are things that there are credentials that are saved, and you never want to save the credentials from that global admin account, because like Chris said, it has the keys to the kingdom. If you make somebody a global admin, you might as well just hand them a backup of the server and say, here's all my data, because that's what they can get access to.
Yeah, they can create accounts. They can give themselves access to mailboxes, add licenses. I mean, it's end of days at that point.
So Chris, if someone had their global admin account compromised, or somebody else got access to it, how would you tell? Where would you
audit logs? And I can't. This is the third part. I can't tell you how important audit logs are. We did a investigation for somebody that had a breach, and they had 2 domains, and neither of them had audit logs turned on. So the problem with not having audit logs turned on is, even if we turn them on, we can only get 7 days of sign-in. We can't see what anybody did inside of Microsoft. We get sign-in logs for 7 days because Microsoft basically has a cache of 7 days of sign-in logs, and those will be enabled when you do that. But you can't see what they did. If you turn on full audit logs, you could see when somebody shared a OneDrive document. You could see when somebody changed some sort of, or SharePoint document. You could see any kind of configuration changes. This is critically important. And this goes back to the Break Glass account. We can see when that account is accessed. We can see what it did and things like that. So this is where we need to be monitoring this as well. But day one, make sure audit logs are turned on. And if they're everybody needs to do this.
Yeah. So, back to that breach I talked a couple of weeks ago, the audit logs actually helped us build the case for what the bad guys did. Because these audit logs showed me when they logged in, showed me what they did, and even showed me the rules that were created on other users' accounts through the global admin. Yep. And with that data, I was able to go back and say, okay, well, believe it or not, this account was accessed from Nigeria. It came in as the business owner and applied rules over on Steve Jones's account.
Yep.
So, logging is critical. And, there are ways to get more logging. There are, Chris and I use some other tools for watching what's going on the Microsoft side, because, if someone got into the account and managed to purge logs on one system, at least we'd have them on another platform.
Well, it's important too, because there's so many logs that no human's going to go through these logs. We need to automate looking at this and generating alerts based on that, and that's why it's critically important. Now, there's some alerts that we can set up inside of Microsoft, but for the most part, third-party tools is something that we use because it makes it a lot easier, especially at scale.
Yeah, we pushed, and Chris, our Cyber Plus package for 2022, we're increasing the logs on Office 365 to 30 days with different licenses, because we need that data.
Yeah, I think 30 days is a sweet spot. Longer than that, I mean, if you're going to get a breach, nobody's waiting 30 days inside of Microsoft. Inside your network, different story. Inside of Microsoft, they usually hit within a couple of days. It might be 3, 4, 5 days, but they usually, once they have access, they'll do some recon, then they'll hit and they'll try to get out. So 30 days is great.
Yeah. So, So MFA, multi-factor authentication, global admins, and audit logs.
And if you're still watching, we're sorry that we had to talk this long about this, but SecureScore, it's probably the number one benchmark for Microsoft. And it's not 100% attainable because they do hide some stuff behind licensing. But yeah, if you see the URL there on the screen, go there. If you don't have access to it, you might have to get your global admin account out or have a provider show you that score. But there's recommendations in there that we can do to improve the security of your Microsoft tenant, and it's critically important. It depends on what you have inside, what you've purchased as far as licensing to what you see. The default is what apps and what's default? I think I should know off the top of my head.
Identity and apps.
Identity and apps, yeah, and then devices is added later if you get a certain license. So, it's important to look at from the standpoint. It gives you really good ideas about how to improve it, it's not the end all be all, but it is something. It's a good benchmark to, and it also shows you a comparison about companies like yours, like what their score would be versus your score.
The other thing I like about it is it will show you your score over time. So
Oh yeah, trending.
if you're if your IT team, your management team is doing the right things, you should see that score slowly going up. Microsoft does change rules, and sometimes scores might drop, but that's something else. That's something else, another vulnerability that they've identified of something that you can do. And like Chris said, there's certain things that some recommendations that you may not have access to in your existing licenses,
Yep.
but there are licenses available to make it work. And a lot of these recommendations are coming in that your compliance teams are asking for, or your cybersecurity insurance is requiring. Mm-hmm. So, having that secure score and that history of what's going on is really, really helpful for proving your case later. Should something happen to say, well, this says you didn't have MFA on, your insurance requires that you have MFA on all accounts. Well, this is another track that you can have in place to say, okay, yeah, we did.
Yeah. And it's funny. I've been playing around with Defender for Business. It's inside of Microsoft, and mine went down because I turned it on, but it added like 700 different things I can do. But
your percentage went down, but your score didn't go down, probably.
Yeah, my percentage went down because based on how many factors it was looking at. So we still benchmark higher than other companies that are compared to us, but there's some things that we got to do just from a tweaking standpoint. But this is a never ending, kind of sum this up. It's a never ending battle, right? We're always going to be looking at that. Like Bob said, Microsoft's going to be adding things. So that's going to change over time. We're going to see those trends. We're going to see what we need to do. And as, you definitely want to keep somebody in mind from a security standpoint, from having a security program and team in place, whether it's in-house or outsourced, just kind of keep you on top of that,
Yep.
And then you should be looking for something like that. Looking at your security score is important. It's not the end all be all, like I said, because there's other things that you can make things insecure even if you have a good secure score, if you just have some bad practices that they're not looking at. So
my password's on the post-it under my keyboard.
Yeah, or Pastebin.
Or Facebook. Cool. Well, I think that's enough for this week. And guys, if you want to check your secure score, check out the link below. It's actually right on the Microsoft site. If your account works on it, it probably means that you're a global admin, and that's another problem by itself. So like I said, if you can't get to the secure score, talk to your IT guys, talk to your service provider, ask them for a copy of the report. It's something that, it's a good place to start. And if you want any more information from us about secure score or some help, just comment below where you're watching this video. Reach out to us. We'd love to help you.
Yeah. Oh, and please don't put your secure score in the comments.
Yeah.
If you want to DM us, that's one thing, but please don't put it in the comments because people will figure that out. But next week we want to go through the secure score, right? Kind of do a little.
Yeah, we can do a deeper dive next week on the secure score.
Okay. All right. Look forward to it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.